Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we are going to implement redux inside our React application. So the best way to learn is to teach. Okay, with this power of imagination, I can show you how I find my way around redux and understand how it works with only these 3 steps. So step 1, you can see your store. So for you to have access to the store, it's either you want to add something or remove something. So you can see your hand will be now dispatching the actions. Maybe you want to add one cake, or you want to remove from the store. So first thing, always we are going to start by creating our store so that we can pass in our reducers, which have our initial state and also our action. And we should take note that our action is an JavaScript object, and it should be inside our action creator, and our action creator is a function. Okay, I will show you how it works. So redux is a predictable state container for JavaScript applications. And we have our store. Always when we create our store, we should pass in our reducer, and our reducer contain our initial state. So what is reducer? Reducer is a pure JavaScript function that contains the logic and calculation that need to be performed on the state, and reducer updates store based on the value of the action. So we have our sample. This function is our reducer, receive 2 proc state and action. So whenever we dispatch an action, it will check which type of action are we dispatching. It's either adding or removing. Then if it is adding, then it will return this, and if it is not, it will return the default state or any other action that we have dispatched. And we have our action. So our action is JavaScript object that has this type attribute, which indicate the type of action we are performing, and has payload. So not all action has payload. Maybe you just want to dispatch an action that doesn't have a payload. It's also possible. And also this function, action will wrap inside our action creator. So let's start now. We are going to create our step 1, that's store, then create reducer, create action and action creator. Then we are going to create a component, and that component will have access to our store. Okay, let's get started. So if you haven't installed the Redux in your React application, you should install Redux and React Redux. So if you have installed them, you can now start. So okay, let me create folders here. Step 1, store, and inside the source folder I will have my reducers in separate folder, and also our actions. So we have them all. Let's create the store now. You can name it store.js. So first you have to import your store from create React. From your Redux, you can import create store. After you import create store from Redux, you can now create a variable to hold your store. Say create store. And always don't forget, our store will pass in our reducers. Let me call it root reducers. And don't forget to export your store. Let me export by default. So now we have successfully created our store and we have passed in our root reducers here, even though we haven't created them. So let me wrap our application to the store so that we can have access to the store using this provider from React Redux. You can move this to up. So provider receive a props of store. So let's pass in our store here. Let's import our store that we have just created now. Store from store folder. So now let's pass in store here and save the file. Okay, so root reducer is not defined. Of course, it's not defined. So let's create our root reducers here. In case you may have more than one reducer, you can use combined reducers from Redux so that you can combine them as an object. You can pass in all your reducers inside. So let's create our reducer and pass in inside our root reducer. So we are going to create the reducers inside reducer folder here. Let me call it a user reducer. So our reducer always have initial state, const initial state. It's an object. Let's have 3 items inside. First name. Let's have first name. Let me use my name. And it's loading to false. An array of users. So we have now created our initial state. That's our store. So we can now create our reducer. Const user reducers. Let me use arrow function. So our reducer will receive 2 props, state and action. So let me use a switch statement to check which type of action are we dispatching. So first, let's have action that will change this is loading from false to true. Let's call it set loading, like this. Sorry, set underscore loading. So now let's return our previous state and then change this is loading only from false to true. So if we have not dispatched this action set loading, then let's return our default state as it was. Return default, return state. So let me export the user reducers. Sorry, by default. So inside our store, let's import them. Let me call it users. So users will have. So if I will use this, if I want to use these user reducers, I will just call users. I will have access to all the state inside our user reducers. Let me save it. During initialization, okay, we haven't initialized our states, so now our plate will be empty. Let's have something inside. So we have now successfully created our store, create our reducer. So now let me create a component and display the first name and its loading. and we are coming back and create our action to dispatch and change this one. So let me create another folder here for component. Component. Let's have user info.js. So let me import this user info inside our app.js here. User info. Okay, so now we have import the file. So inside our user info here, let me display the name inside our user reducer here. Let's try and display the first name. And don't forget, for us to have access to this state, we have to use the reducer, as we kind of change the name inside our store here, users. Okay, let me show you how you can do that. So let's have our map state to props. Map state to props. So it will receive these props of your state, and don't forget, always return an object. So you can have the first name, let me call it a username here. You can call it anything you want. You can use your state dot users dot first name. Yes, it's users. Okay, save the file. So let's connect the file with our store using this connect from React Redux. So you can grab this one like this and pass in your map state to props. Save the file, take this username and pass it as a props here, and now have user name is props dot username. Save. So as you can see, now we have access to the initial state. We even display the username, as you can see now. So let's also, the same way we import the same way we have access to the first name, is the same way we can have access to all the state inside this one. So you can just copy this and paste, change this to loading, and your first name to is loading, and this, forget a comma here. So now loading. Okay, if you like, you can remove these props and destructure everything. It will be easier. And use username and loading. Let me console log this loading and see if it will return false. I'll save this. As you can see, now it's displaying false. So now let's use ternary operator and check if its loading is true. Display loading, else display welcome. Okay, let's save this. So our initial state of loading is false, so it's displaying welcome. So let's create a button to change this and dispatch our action. So set loading. So our target now is to click this button and change this welcome to its loading, which we have already created our reducer here. So if we dispatch this action set loading, it will take the previous state and change its loading to true. And for us to dispatch this action is through our for us to dispatch this through our action. Let's create the action inside our action folder here. Let me call it index.js. So this action, as you may recall, have its JavaScript object that has type, which should be exact the same as this set loading. So if this action is dispatch set loading, then it will change this its loading from false to true. So we have our action now. Let's wrap our action inside our action creator. So const, let's call it set loading like this. So we have our action creator. Let's return code this action and pass it here. So now we have successfully created our action. Let me export the file, export the function, sorry. So now we export the action. So now when we dispatch it, it will change. Go to component users. Let me import set loading from our action folder. As you can all see, it's now imported. So now for us to dispatch this action, we have to use const map dispatch to props, since we are now dispatching. So it will receive a props. Let's call it dispatch. Otherwise it will also return. So now let's see. Since we import our action, set loading is now, let me call it set loading as well here, so that it will not be set loading. I'm going to have a callback function, dispatch, and pass in our set loading. So this set loading from our action here is a function. I forget this. So let's pass this map dispatch to props as well here. I use comma and paste this one here. So let's save this. Okay, now let me try and dispatch the action and see what happened. Oh, I have to pass it as a props as well. Set loading here, comma, set loading as well. So when I click this button using onClick, I want to dispatch this action, set loading. So I hope this will work. Let me save this and click this one. Oh, it's not working. What happened? Let's see. Loading dispatch. Okay, let's see. Okay. Oh, it's now working. I have to pass it as a function as well. So as you can see, I refresh now. It's now back to welcome. When you click this, it's now changed to loading. And also in our console, it's now returning true. So now we have successfully created our store, reducers and action, and we even dispatched some of the action. So there is a situation whereby you want to pass in a value inside your action. So let's have another action and dispatch it. Let's create another one. Set loading. Let me create another action that will change the first name. So let me create another case here. Let's have set name. Let's return our previous state and extract the name. So the first name, our first name now will receive payload. Receive our action here will receive a payload. Action will receive a payload. So whatever value we pass in inside our action when dispatching, that's inside our open and close bracket inside our function, it will change this first name. Let me save this file here and let's create action for that. Copy and paste this one, set loading to set, we call it set user. So let's pass, since it is will receive props, and also it will be a payload of data. Set user, set name. It should be the same. Now let me save this one, and inside our user file, let me import set user, which will receive the username and change this name. So now it's the same way we can dispatch this. So you can just copy and paste this one and change, let's call it set username and set user. Remove this loading. Don't forget comma here. Save the file. So now I will have a button that will dispatch this action. Set username. Let me pass it as a props as well. Comma. Set username. So let me create another button here. Let's call it change name. So when I click this button, this name will change, but it will receive a props. So using on click, pass our callback function here and set username, any name you pass in here. So let's try John Doe. Okay, let's set this one. Let me click this button and see if it will change. Okay, it's now clearing everything. Let's see what happened. Oops. Okay, so when you want to set the username, you have to pass in the data so that this action will know when dispatching it will receive a props of any kind of username you are passing. So let's refresh this and change. So as you can see now, the name is changing. So let me create an input file so that it will receive input type of text. You can pass any name, click a button, the name you pass, it will change based on that name. Okay, let me create the input here. Input type text. Oops. Let me create a new line here. So any name you will have passed, any name here, it will change based on that name here. Okay, let me create our state use state, so that we can store the name as a name and set name use state. So our input type will receive a value of the name, and this button also will be the same value inside our input. And on change we receive event and change the name based on the event that has been dispatched. Set name event dot target dot value, like this. Save. Okay, let's refresh this. Let's type in any name. Oops. Okay, the component engine control. Okay. Pass since the name is in string format, pass in an empty string here. Now let's have user 1 change. As you can see, it's now changing. User 2 change. It's now working. Okay, let me make sure that if the name has been changed, it will clear our input. So after this, on click button of changing the username, let me wrap this like this. So after the name has been set, it should change. Set this name to an empty string. Set name empty string. Save. Let's refresh this and see. User 1 change. Second user. So it's now working successfully. So we have now successfully created our action that will receive a payload of data and change our state. So the next thing we can do now is to create another action that will dispatch and add user here inside our array. So now let me create another case here. Let's call it add user underscore user, like this. It will return our previous state. Oh, sorry. So if it returns the previous state, we now have access to these users. So our users in array now have the previous value of the users also, and pass in the action dot payload. So all I did here is, when we dispatch this add user, we are returning the state, and that's a copy of the previous state, and extract this users here, and now change whatever the payload is receiving. We are now changing it here. And for us to have access to these users, it's the same way we display the first name, and it's loading as we already did here. So inside our user file here, let me copy it and paste this one. Let's call it users. And now users here, don't forget comma. Save this one, and we should pass these users also as a props. Okay, comma users. So let me console log and see if it will display empty. Okay, empty array. Console.log users. Save this one. Wow, it's now working. So since initially the users array is empty, maybe you can add 1 here and see. Save this. See, it's now working. So now let me create an action that will dispatch this at users inside our action file here. So let me copy this and paste. Set users. Let's create another one as a set. This set user will change this name. Let me call this at user. Okay, let's see. What do you call it? Yes, it's at user here as well. At underscore user. Save. It will receive a payload of data and at inside our users array. So now let's try and see inside our user file here. Let's see. Let's create. Let's have another button. Let me create horizontal line here. So here we are going to have another button that will dispatch the action and add new user. So whenever we add new user, it should add it inside our array using on a click. Oops, we have to pass in the same way we dispatch all other action. Copy and paste this. You can call it at user. It will also receive props. Let me import this one. Import from our action as well. At user. So we now import the action from our action file. Let's pass it here inside our map state to map dispatch to prop, which will receive the payload of data as well. Don't forget comma here. Now let me save this file. See, okay, on click. So on click here we receive a callback function and add our at user here. Have to pass it as well as a props at user. Copy this and pass it here. So let me have new user as user 1. Save this one. So when I click this button, it should add user 1 inside our array. So let me refresh and click this button now. So as you can see, we have user 1 here. So okay, let me clear this one so that it should not console log twice. Add user is now adding user 1. When you add again, it will add another user. You see, it's adding. So you can create also input to pass in the dynamic users inside your store. So let me create a input type and then pass in any name you want. Let me create an input type of text. Set this one. So any type of name we pass, it will add inside our store. So the same way we use this one. Just copy and paste this. So this user and set user. Okay. And this value here should be user and on change also set user given the target dot value. So let me pass in the value of the user here so that any name we pass in should be the name that we'll add. Let's have John. We'll see John is now added. let's have yeah, see, it's now adding. So any name you add, it will just display the name inside. Okay, let me display all the users here instead of just console locking them. Okay, let's have the same way we have access to all this one inside our map state to props. It's the same way we can have access to all the users. I think, okay, we already have this one. Okay, it's users. Okay, now let me use map and display them using map function. It's users dot map receive element and index. Okay, sorry, I have to wrap it inside this open and close bracket. So let's return a paragraph of each element, and also we have our key. Let me pass the index as our key. So as you can see, we have now the users clearly inside here. Let's have user 2. It's now, so we have now finished the first part of our application using Redux code. Now let me use there is another way you can have access to this name, have access to your store, the initial state, everything inside, without using these maps, dispatched and map state and everything. So let me create another file here and show you how we can have access to it. Let's call it new user.js. I'll just display the name and dispatch one action, then you can do the rest. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let me remove this and this new users here. Okay, so here let me display the name first, as I did here. New file. Let's display the username. User. Okay. So using useSelector. useSelector, you can use it and have access to your store easily. You can use a const, let's say name, useSelector. So useSelector will also receive state, and it will return the state dot users, as we have access inside map state to props. And let's see first name. Okay, so as you can see, we don't need to pass in any props here. Just copy the name here and save it. Okay, let's see what happened. Let's see. The string function about it. Okay, default name. Let's see, users. Okay, this users is capital U. Yeah. Now let's refresh and see. As you can see, we have now access to the initial first name. So for you to dispatch is easily as well. You can use useDispatch, import from your React Redux as well. You can use const dispatch as a variable, and then so when dispatching is not much difficult, you can just, let's see which type of action are we going to dispatch. Let's see, set loading, no, let's change the name, set name, since we are going to pass in a name as our action, as our payload here. Let's see, add name. Okay, let's change name. So when this button is clicked, yes, it will also dispatch the action. Let's import the action as the name, set name. Okay, sorry, set user. So set user imported successfully. So when we dispatch this action, our set user will receive any name you pass in. Let's say subscribe. Save. When you change this one, it's now showing you any name you can pass in. So that's how you can dispatch any action using this dispatch. I start with the all syntax using this using map state to props, so that maybe you may encounter and find a way to, maybe you're facing any difficulties in any, maybe all code base using this one. At least you can learn have the basic and find your way around. So if you find this useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.